great speaker. No pressure. Give him a couple more. Okie doke. So our next panel is about connected and automated vehicles, and it's kind of interesting how I met these guys. So my name's Michael Harvard, and I'm our international sales guy. And typically when I'm out and about and we're giving presentations and we go into cities and we have conversations, it's either with traffic engineers or approaching through the signal techs. So Sorry Molly, who is our Electromega rep, he sets up a meeting for me one day and he's like, hey, we're going over to talk to these guys, APMA. And I was like, yeah, what's that? And he's like, oh no, you'll like them. So I met Colin, and I'll get there in one sec. So I met Colin, we had a great conversation one day, and he says, yeah, we need to come back and have another meeting, and this time they're gonna bring Festival Hydro. I said, Festival Hydro, what's that? He's like, the city utility company. And I said, okay, this is kind of interesting. I'm still trying to find out exactly how I'm gonna get in the city of Stratford through APMA, the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association of Canada, and Festival Hydro, the utility. So I have a meeting, and I literally walked away from that meeting just wowed, really impressed. I told him, you guys have to come back. You got to talk with us. And so I've got him on stage today. So we've got Isni Simsadini, who is the CEO of Festival Hydro. We've got Colin Dhillon, and he is the Chief Technology Officer. I've got Warren Ollie, who's the Vice President of Innovation. So two from APMA and one from Festival Hydro. So I'm going to give you just a brief little write-up on them. The Avon Technology Demonstration Zone, located in Stratford, Ontario, is a site where Ontario-based companies with connected and automotive vehicle technologies can test, validate, and showcase innovative products to potential customers and partners. Groups such as automotive supply manufacturers, original equipment manufacturers enjoy these demos in a controlled environment under the accordance of applicable laws, regulations, using vehicle platforms such as city buses, fleet vehicles, and vehicles in general. Making all this happen is APMA, Canada's National Association of representing OEM parts producers, equipment producers, tools, supplies, advanced technologies, and services for the worldwide auto industry. Their members represent 90% of the independent parts production in Canada, or in terms we all like to talk about, $35 billion in auto parts. The APMA operates the demonstration zone I just spoke of on behalf of Avon. And Avon is provincial for the province of Ontario. On behalf of Avon, in order to better position Ontario as a global leader in connected and automotive infrastructure jurisdiction. So at last and not least in all of this is the hometown utility, and that's Festival Hydro. Without cooperation of Festival Hydro, they would not make any of this a reality. Their fluid, nimble approach to providing their community, as well as 6 other communities with reliable power and infrastructure is pretty amazing. Their vision to enable the community to thrive with technology and prosper as a result of that same innovation is why I love their story. These guys are who say, let's get it done, not we don't have any budget. That's why I wanted to bring them here. They've got a really fluid, nimble approach to the whole idea of bringing innovation into a small community. So we're going to get started. We're going to ask them a few questions, and I'm going to sit back and kind of listen. But we'll get them loaded at the end. If you have any questions at all, we'd love to hear from you. So I'm going to start off with you, Colin. Tell us about the Avon project, what it is and what its objectives are.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you to everyone here at GRIDSMART and the Intersect 19 conference. Glad you guys reached out to us, and we're glad we're here, actually. The keynote that we all listened to this morning was extremely informative. I'll step back a bit, and I'll talk about the APMA and tell you a little bit about that, and then I'll kind of bleed into the whole Avon project. The Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association was founded about 67, 68 years ago in Canada. It is the national association that represents all parts manufacturers in the auto sector. As Michael has said, 90% of all parts that are made by our members. But there's been changes. We've been more than just that regulatory policy kind of organization, the lobbying kind of wing of the auto sector. Our industry, and I think we're all kind of somewhat related here, is going through a major change. The auto sector is going through a huge change, a disruption. And so with that disruption, you have the likes of Warren Alley and myself joining the association to help guide through this kind of connected, autonomous, era that we're working through. And we're having to do that to make sure our members stay up to speed on all these global changes. We just had our conference in June, this past June, and we called it the race. The survival of the fastest, because we do feel that there is a bit of a race as well globally. There is no shadow of a doubt China is setting a bit of a tone and a standard when it comes to electrification, to connected technology, maybe some autonomous, and their regulations aren't going to be as tight and as stringent as the ones that we have here in the United States or Canada. And so with all of these changes going on, how do we make sure that the supply chain, because in the auto sector, I'm sure you're all aware, is, General Motors, may have its brand on that vehicle, and they may do the engine and some of the sheet metal, but 20,000 components are brought together to make that vehicle the one that you purchase. And so 20,000 components to 30,000 components are through the supply chain. And so we now want to make sure we backfill and provide the intelligence to that supply chain in order for the OEMs to make the right decisions, not just the existing OEMs, but the new OEMs as well. Tesla was mentioned earlier. There's another company called Rivian out of Michigan that's going to be launching 2 electric vehicles, and there's Bollinger, and there's a few others as well that are coming out of the States. And so how do we still stay viable, and how do we make sure that we, as North America, stay competitive? And so with that in mind, the APMA about 5-6 years ago started with a connected vehicle project. They were donated a Lexus RX 350 from Toyota Canada, and they added in technology from about 15 members who were these new members. They weren't your regular auto parts suppliers. They were these auto tech companies that were doing technology. And they used the vehicle to help showcase their technology, and it went really well. It was demonstrated throughout North America, including the West Coast. And because of that, the province of Ontario, Canada, decided to start AVEN, the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network project, which is going to try and help Ontario-based auto tech startups get their technology, whether it's vehicle technology or whether it's infrastructure technology, in front of customers. How do we help General Motors or Chrysler or Ford choose their next, say, infotainment system technology? Well, we'd like it to be an Ontario-developed technology, and we will put that into a vehicle, because we're going to be running, we've already got 2, we've got another 2 vehicles coming this year, next year, and then every year we're adding 2 more vehicles to our fleet. And so you're going to have 20 vehicles running around over this 5-year project with about 200 pieces of technology, and we're demonstrating them in the city of Stratford, which is a smart city. So there's the whole V2X, vehicle to everything communication going on. And that's the purpose. And because of that, we get invited to places like Knoxville, Tennessee. We get invited to Singapore. We get invited to Germany to speak and to kind of share the objectives. I'll stop talking because I can actually talk for England, for India, and for Canada. And I'll pass it on over to Warren if he wants to backfill.
One thing I want to really go back and just emphasize is at Intersect, this really is the intersection of the auto group and all the technology that's actually in the infrastructure. And that has to occur for all the connected automotive vehicles. So I love that we're here talking about it, and I love that we're going to get to actually do that in the city of Stratford. So I'll let Warren go a little further.
And so one of the other things that we're finding in a challenging state is the automotive parts sector, just like the automotive sector, has been all about a manufacturing business model. We build a car, we sell a car, we finance a car, and we service a car. And there's been a certain amount of market value that's been attributed to those companies in that space. But where we're going, and that brings in the whole micromobility issue, is now that the car is built, just like with a cell phone, it all becomes how you're going to be able to monetize every kilometer that those vehicles travel, or on your cell phone, every nanosecond that you're in front of it. And so the reason why we are here, and the reason why this conversation, this dialogue is happening, is the vehicles are traveling on the paved roads like we know, but those transactions, selling kilometers, selling services, selling electrons, depending on what OEM platform you're talking about, is going to require a different set of infrastructure in order for those transactions to occur, in order for those kilometers to be traveled. And this is the world that GRIDSMART plays in. This is the conversation that Intersect is having. And so that's why we were happy when Michael invited us to come down here, because we are now having our dialogue connected to your dialogue, and now we're finding that happy space in the middle where we're identifying those challenges, we're talking about the opportunities that we see, and how can GRIDSMART, its organization, its ecosystem, play a role in that, because it's distinctly different from the automotive sector and the build factor of those cars. You know, you're talking, your sales cycle and your customers are the utilities. They are the Rhizome networks of the world, versus what are we doing on the automotive side. So hopefully we can share some light on that, but hopefully you can also ask us some questions that we have to think as we work with Usni and the team in Stratford.
So what's the importance of smart infrastructure for a smart city and for connected automotive vehicles?
Well, I mean, from an automotive perspective, it's to ensure that those transactions are occurring in real time. There's no latencies with the vehicles moving. Safety has always been paramount in automotive. Safety of the worker in the plant, safety of the driver and the passengers inside the vehicle, safety of the environment all around it, in terms of the other people, the other infrastructure around you, and of course, of late, it's safety of the global environment as well. And so when you're talking on this technology space now, it's, you know, if we let Colin get into the cybersecurity aspect of it, the privacy issues of passengers, of related, as this data is coming in, you know, there's other safety issues that we have to think about. And this is where the infrastructure side is now interacting with those vehicles. And then the data is just there being gathered by so many different sources. So how can we utilize it, keep it safe, keep it secure, but how can we ensure that that data is being distributed and shared and used in real time to ensure safety for everything else?
So this is where we see that monumental shift from where we say infrastructure and everyone here thinks of a road and a bridge. I say infrastructure to you, and you're over here talking about nanoseconds and bits and the technology infrastructure side.
Yeah, the one thing that I might add to that from a city perspective is we care about efficiency. So if you think about how we use our roads, how we use our intersections, how police vehicles or fire trucks or anything make it to where they're going to save lives, the efficiency of being able to get through the city is a big piece of it. And you know, we often don't think about it, but the thing that I think about every time I'm at a red light, 7 cars back, and I see the light go green is, why doesn't everyone just step on the gas? Like, why can't we all just at the same time go, it's green, let's all start going, instead of, you know, Q1, Q2, like by the time you get through. And this is the type of infrastructure that we're talking about that will make our lives better. So, you know, full autonomy, it's a great vision, but let's get the simple stuff, right? If our cars can start the movement for us at a green light, and then we take over, well, guess how much time that's going to save? Guess how much idling that's going to save? Guess how much quicker that's going to get you to your destination? It's going to make your city more livable, and that's important.
Yeah, I believe it was last year the lady from Virginia was talking about how they had to actually factor in that 1 second gap for a timing where everyone's on their phone and then looks up and starts. Glad you're speaking, Usni. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the city of Stratford, what role you play in all of this, and why Festival Hydro is so different. I will tell you this, when you think of a utility company, you think of the most slow, stable, forward-thinking as far as like 100 years out plan. And it's where you put your money when you retire because, you know, they pay a good dividend, they don't have a lot of growth, and these guys don't strike me that way. So I'll let
Sure.
Usni.
So yeah, so our age, we're old, right? So we're about 120, 125-year-old company, been around for a long time. The one thing I always have to explain in the U.S., we're called Festival Hydro. We don't deal in the water business. Ontario is based on hydroelectric, a large portion. We're actually more nuclear than hydroelectric, but about 35% hydroelectric. So that name seems to stick in Ontario. Electric companies are called hydro companies. So there that one is. City of Stratford has a long history in innovation. So we were, You know, a community that, like many other communities, thrived on the railway early on. Thomas Edison actually lived in Stratford, which I think is a really, really cool kind of a note. Now, we're fairly down south here. Does anyone know or have heard of Stratford, Ontario? Is that some? Yeah, we've got some in the audience, which is great. What most people hear about is our theater. So we've got one of the largest Shakespearean festivals in the world. So we sell, our community is about 30,000 people. We sell about 600,000 tickets to a Shakespearean plays every year. So it's a big attraction. And to me, what's really interesting about that story, a lot of people don't know the origins in it, but to me, it talks about the innovation of that city. So at that time, there was a person within the community named Tom Patterson. He saw that there was kind of a fall coming in terms of some of the businesses that were happening in Stratford. It was becoming, you know, a little bit more of a ghost town. There weren't jobs, all these things happening. So he went to city council at the time, and he said, hey, I need $100 because I'm going to go down to New York. I'm going to grab a director. I'm going to bring him back up here, and we're going to put on plays in the park about Shakespeare, and it's going to be great. And you would think about, you know, I asked today, if people went to their city council and said, I need some money to go travel to New York City to go find a guy to start something, what the answer would be. They'd drum that guy out so fast, it would be unbelievable. Not the city of Stratford. They said, hey, you can't make it down there for $100. Here's $125. Go do your thing, right? So went down there, found the director, brought him up. Now, as I'd mentioned, we sell over 600,000 tickets. We bring in over 1 million tourists a year, and I think it contributes over $100 million per year in GDP in our region. So it just tells you that a vision is something that is very important, and a community that supports it is also equally important. So that's kind of the backdrop of the city that I essentially work for. So Festival Hydro, I actually run 2 companies, Festival Hydro, which is the electric company, and one called Rhizome Networks, which is our ISP company. So we also have an internet company. Those companies are wholly owned by the city of Stratford, but we have separate boards. So I don't report through city council. I don't have to go through that bureaucracy. I have a board of directors that's independently selected, and that gives permission to do these types of projects. Festival Hydro in its current iteration came around in the year 2000. That's when deregulation happened in our industry, and we had to spin out all of our fiber assets into a separate company. That's where Rhizome Networks came in. So I'll talk to you a little bit about Rhizome. For 10 years, we didn't do anything more than dark fiber. So we laid glass, and that's all we did. In 2010, a unique opportunity came up, which was we were mandated to do smart metering. So smart meters kind of give hourly readings of what you're using for your electricity, and we're able to get that data, provide it to the customer so they can see how they're actually using their electricity. Every other utility in the province decided that they would use what's called a proprietary backhaul system. They would get that data back either through one of the telecom companies or they'd build their own towers, essentially only for backhauling this data. So if you think about it, that's 720 readings a month per customer. That is nothing. Like, if you think about how much data you stream in a video versus how much you'd get from a reading every hour of you use 7 kilowatt hours of electricity, like, there's really nothing there. So what we decided to do was actually build a citywide Wi-Fi system. So that was where we made that decision to say, hey, we got to put in, we know we got to spend this money. Why don't we do it for something that's actually going to benefit our citizens? So we built a citywide Wi-Fi system, so now all of our citizens can be connected. The service cost is $30 a month for unlimited usage. It's about 20 meg symmetrical service. It's provided wirelessly, so we don't have to, dig up to your home to get there. And then we also realized that there's some people in our communities who, and we all know internet is becoming a basic human right, that people need access. So we've actually done our service so you don't need to sign contracts. If you want to buy a day of internet service for $1.25, you can do that. We also have free zones that are established around the city that if people need to go there to get internet access, they can. They just simply watch a little video and then they get online. So that's been the trajectory of our ISP company. And on our utility company, we also believe in innovation. So we're actually the place that houses the largest battery storage facility in Canada, largest lithium ion phosphate battery storage. The size of it's about 40 megawatt hours, if that gives you any sense. It's about 40,000 homes for an hour. We only have a total of 20,000 customers, so I mean that's always good to have, but it's something that's very helpful for us. But for us, we're always looking at that innovation, how we can use things twice. So I always say you buy it for a single purpose, but it better have a dual use, because that's where you actually get your money back as a community being able to do those things.
Yeah, we like dual use. We're triple use as GRIDSMART. So one of the things that I heard when he was discussing all this was, I don't have to go through city council. I have a board of directors and these things. And what that really means is that Festival Hydro can literally bring in technology, get it out and about, installed, and enjoying it before it's dated. And I know that a lot of us go to talk to municipalities, and it's such a long process to get us in, for them to begin to use it. And then we're into our second and third and fourth generation. These guys aren't like that. So kind of jumping over here back to where Warren was a second ago. We've heard this conversation on this stage numerous times, but talk a little bit about DSRC versus 5G, how you're approaching that, and who's coming in to kind of do some stuff with you on that.
Do you guys want to handle that? Do you want me to handle that?
So, you know what, we normally add a slide in which shows like a boxing ring and DSRC on the one side and 5G or CV2X on the other, because it does feel like there's a bit of a battle. The game really changed this past April when Toyota announced they wouldn't be investing any more into DSRC. They didn't say they wouldn't be supporting it anymore, they just said no more investment into DSRC. I think we all know CV2X, 5G, cellular communications is the future. How soon is it in the future? Well, in China, they're going to have 50 cities by the end of 2019, full 5G in the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum, you know, communicating with whatever they want. But that's China. I think if I was to, you know, throw a dart in the board, I'd say 2022. Ford has been pretty vocal when it comes to CV2X and 5G, and Ford are going to introduce 5G compliant technology on every vehicle of theirs from 2022. So for me, if we're trying to draw a line in the sand and seeing where and when we have to do the conversions, it's probably going to be around 2022. And I think, you know, DSRC, and this was from one of the US regulatory bodies when I was reading the article about Toyota, and they said, you know, we'd opened up 5.9 gigahertz, and there was a lack of use of that spectrum for DSRC. And so, you know, even the regulatory bodies are kind of wavering towards, you know, cellular, to say DSRC just wasn't taken on board by enough companies, and companies meaning infrastructure companies and OEM companies. I think General Motors has their Cadillac CTS 2017 model onwards that has some DSRC tech in there. But I think when we do see, you know, the push of CV2X, 5G, the cellular base, which will be embedded into our phones, will be embedded into our clothing. You know, Google has a company called Jacquard, Jquard. They do these wearable tech jackets. They've got other products coming out. It's funny because Warren and I both have one of these $500 Levi Jacquard jackets. As soon as I joined the company, we bought these and we branded them with our own. I think there is potential health issues with 4G LTE as well. I've got a pair of AirPods. I don't use them because I literally got the AirPods as a gift from my wife, and then within a day or two, I was on Flipboard, and there was a headline about how they can cause cancer. And so there's just actually my son stole them from me, but I told him not to wear them. But there are so many open issues. You know, I think it was mentioned earlier about cell phones and cancer. I think all of that wireless kind of, you know, vibrations and technology is a potential issue. I really do feel it is. And I think, but 5G I don't think is any greater than 4G than LTE.
I was going to say the frequencies are kind of similar. The other thing to kind of keep track of, and it's interesting, is the amount of you know, radiation or whatever, electromagnetic radiation coming off of a product goes down kind of as a product of the distance, right? Distance squared. So the further away you are from it, the less the challenge. And so I tested something when I was at the house I previously lived at. We had huge transmission lines down at not at the end of the driveway, but just kind of across the street. So we've got these great little products from work that you can pick up, and I'll tell you how much EM you've got. So I walked down my driveway, and it was nothing, 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 nothing. Get across the street, not really anything. I'm right under the line. I can register something. I walk into my house with this thing on, and I turn on the light switch, and it was like 7 times as much EM coming off my light switch. So I think the big thing here is the cell phone that you're holding up to your head is probably a bigger problem than the access point that's, 20, 30 feet up a pole and so far away from you on that side. But
Well, guys, thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I think we're back in here in about 7 or 8 minutes, so